I just want to read you guys some poems. I chose 4 poems that aren't my own and 1 that is. And I tried to choose poems that would allow you to use your imagination to reimagine some things. Also to prove to you that poetry isn't just this inaccessible thing that people change the word order of their sentences. It's alive and it's applicable, and you will understand what I'm saying for the most part. First one I want to read is by a poet named David Ferry, who I studied under at BU. He just came out with a new book. This poem is about aging, which I think is something that we all experience. It's called Soul. What am I doing inside this old man's body? I feel like I'm the insides of a lobster, all thought and all digestion and pornographic inquiry and getting about and bewilderment and fear, avoidance of trouble, belief in what? God knows. Vague memories of friends and what they said last night, and seeing outside of myself from here inside myself, waving my claws, inconsequential, wavering, and my feelers preternatural, trembling, with their amazing, troubling sensitivity to threat. And I'm aware of and embarrassed by my ways of getting around and my protective shell. Where is it that she I loved has gone to, as this cold seawater is washing over my back? Staying along the lines of, I love David's metaphor of being a lobster, the insides of a lobster. I want to stick with animals. For a second, literally 1 second, I want you to think about what it's like to be eaten by a lion, which won't happen in America unless you're at a zoo, I guess. And this poem I'm going to read is called How to Be Eaten by a Lion by a poet named Michael Johnson. And he reimagines it. So we usually we imagine it as this horrible experience. And he puts a twist on that, and I thought it was good. How to Be Eaten by a Lion by Michael Johnson. If you hear the rush, the swish of mottled sand and dust kicked up under the striving paws, its cessation falling into the sharp and brittle grass, like the tick of a tin roof under sun or hint of rain that nightly wakes you, try to stand your ground. Try not to scream, for it devalues you. That tawny head and burled mange, the flattened ears of its sleek engine will seem only a blur, a shock, a shadow across your neck that leaves you cold. It may seem soft, barely a blow, more like a falling, an exquisite giving of yourself to the ground, made numb by those eyes. It may be easier just to watch, for fighting will only prolong things, and you will have no time to notice the sky, the texture of dust, what incredible leaves the trees have. Instead, focus on your life, its crimson liquor he grows drunk on. Notice the way the red highlights his face, how the snub nose is softened, the lips made fuller. Notice his deft musculature, his rapture. Because in all of creation, there is not art to compare with such elegance, such simplicity. Notice this and remember it, this way in which you became beautiful when you thought there was nothing more. Not bad, huh? Another thing I like about poetry, or something I've learned as I've written it for the last couple of years, is that poetry gives you the opportunity, I guess all literature does, but poetry in specific gives you the opportunity to experience something you wouldn't otherwise experience. For example, this poem, I'm not going to tell you what it's about because you'll figure it out really fast. This poem is about an experience that I, hopefully, will never have, that I can't have. And the poet rendered this both interesting to me as well as beautiful. It's by a poet named Juliana Baggett. This is the first poem of hers I ever read. I haven't read any since either. I might not because I love this poem. But this one's called For Furious Nursing Baby. Frothy and pink as a rabid pig, you, a mauler, a lunatic stricken with a madness induced by flesh, squeeze my skin until blotched, nicked. Your fingernails are jagged and mouth slick. Pinprick scabs jewel my breasts. Your tongue, your wisest muscle, is the wet engine of discontent. Itself fastens by a purse bead of spit, while your elegant hands flail, conducting orchestral milk, and sometimes prime the pump. Nipple in mouth, nipple in hand, you have your cake and eat it too. Then when wrenched loose, you'll eat sorrow, loss. One flexed hand twists as you open your mouth to eat your fist. I love it. If you told me 5 years ago I was going to wear makeup and stand in front of people and read poems about breastfeeding, I would have gone into politics. This next poet I'm going to read is rather famous. His name is Robert Pinsky. He's the reason I'm here, literally. He gave TEDxNewEngland my name, and they sent me an email. He also was the last line of defense. He approved me for getting into the program, the writing program at BU, which is phenomenal if any of you want to go into poetry. That's really good. This poem is interesting to me because it's a way of seeing yourself outside of yourself, seeing yourself in another context. And I might have just liked this because I love the movie The Last Samurai, where Tom Cruise learns to be a samurai. But this poem, I'm not going to tell you what I think it's about. You can choose for yourself. It's really interesting, though. It's called Samurai Song. When I had no roof, I made audacity my roof. When I had no supper, my eyes dined. When I had no eyes, I listened. When I had no ears, I thought. When I had no thought, I waited. When I had no father, I made care my father. When I had no mother, I embraced order. When I had no friend, I made quiet my friend. When I had no enemy, I opposed my body. When I had no temple, I made my voice my temple. I have no priest, my tongue is my choir. When I have no means, fortune is my means. When I have nothing, death will be my fortune. Need is my tactic, detachment is my strategy. When I had no lover, I courted my sleep. Robert's a lot better at what he does than I am. This last poem, like I mentioned, is my own. It's going to be coming out in the magazine Salamander, which is based here in Boston. Great magazine if you're looking for something to read. I wrote a lot of poems when I was at BU about growing up in Idaho, which is where I grew up. And this one is kind of the opening poem to that sequence. It's called Idaho History. It has an epigram, which is the motto of the state. It's "Mayest thou live forever." And that comes back later on, but not in English. Idaho History. Referring to the territory itself, the Comanches said, "Idae." The Plains Apache used it too, but there it meant enemy. In the 1860s, a Mr. Willing said that Idaho was a Shoshone phrase. A lie, although the sun did seem to come from the mountains. There was no shortage of outside places to explore. I remember raspberries, swimming under bridges, garter snakes in mason jars, holding open barbed wire fences with 2 hands and a foot. My eyes never left the ground in the foothills. I'd scour the dirt, hoping each stone was an arrowhead, slicing dead reeds for Indian gum. At the 4th grade rendezvous, I traded 3 beadwork geckos for leather pouches, perfect for holding water rocks and sagebrush lizards. I caught one on Squaw Butte. His tail flicked my fingers. His ventral patches were blue, and he was squishy. "Esto perpetua," I said, and flung him through the air. Thanks very much.